The scent of toasted spices and simmering coconut milk usually brought a smile to Chef Antoine Dubois' face. It was the signature aroma of the Golden Spoon, his beloved restaurant, known for its unique blend of traditional French techniques with an adventurous global palate. But tonight, that familiar comfort was laced with a growing knot of dread in Antoine's stomach. It was a Tuesday, typically a slower night, but ever since the Golden Spoon had been featured in Gourmet Today magazine, Tuesdays were just as bustling as Saturdays. Tonight the reservations were stacked, and every single table had ordered at least one, if not two, plates of Antoine's legendary Memphis Melody Curry. The Memphis Melody Curry wasn't just a dish, it was an experience. A rich, creamy, slightly sweet, and perfectly spicy Thai-inspired curry. Its secret ingredient, the very soul of its distinct flavor, was a specific artisan-crafted peanut butter. Not just any peanut butter, mind you. This was a small batch, single origin, spread from a family farm in rural Georgia, a farm that tragically had gone out of business 2 years ago. Antoine had bought up their entire remaining stock, enough industrial-sized tubs to last him, he thought, for at least 5 years. He was meticulous about his inventory, always had been. Every tub was precisely labeled, dated, and stored in a temperature-controlled pantry. He hummed a little tune, a classic rockabilly riff, as he wiped down his stainless steel counter. His staff, a well-oiled machine, moved around him with practiced grace. Sous Chef Leo expertly chopped cilantro, while Maria, his head server, smoothly navigated the dining room. Her smile as bright as the polished silverware. Everything was perfect, Leo called out, his voice tinged with an unusual edge of panic. The curry needs more, the special ingredient. Antoine nodded, already reaching for the last tub he'd pulled from the pantry this morning. It was a heavy, squat container, about the size of a small bucket. He'd estimated there was enough for at least 20 more servings, maybe 30 if he was careful. Plenty to get through tonight's rush and a good chunk of tomorrow's. He gripped the handle of the tub, bracing himself for its familiar weight. But as he lifted, his hand slipped and the tub nearly flew from his grasp. It was too light, far too light. His brow furrowed. Had someone used more than they should have? No, his kitchen was a temple of precision. He popped the lid, or rather, there it wasn't. The tub was empty. Not almost empty. It was so utterly, profoundly empty that it looked like it had been lit clean by 100 hungry squirrels. A faint, oily sheen clung to the plastic. A ghost of the glorious peanut butter that should have been there, and distorting eyes widened in disbelief. His hum died in his throat. Leo asked, walking closer, noticing the sudden stillness that had fallen over Antoine. Antoine didn't answer. He just held up the empty tub, rotating it slowly as if by turning it, the golden brown treasure might magically reappear. What happened? Leo's voice was a whisper, mirroring Antoine's own unspoken horror. It's gone, Antoine finally croaked, his voice raw. He ran his hand through his already disheveled hair, a habit he usually reserved for moments of extreme stress. This was beyond extreme. This was a culinary catastrophe. Gone, but how? At least 2 more tubs in the back. No! Antoine saw the reality crashing down on him with the force of a falling anvil. This was the last one. I just checked inventory yesterday. This was the very last one. Cold sweat broke out on Antoine's forehead despite the heat of the kitchen, the Memphis Melody Curry. The signature dish, the reason, the Golden Spoon, was booked solid for weeks. And he had no peanut butter, not a single precious spoonful of the irreplaceable kind he needed. His mind raced desperately, trying to find a solution. He thought of the other tubs, meticulously catalogued. Had he miscounted? Had someone made an unscheduled delivery? He dashed to the pantry, his chef's clogs clattering frantically on the tiled floor. He flung open the pantry door, his eyes scanning the shelves, his breath held tight. Spices, flours, sugars, oils, all perfectly organized, but no industrial-sized tubs of Georgia peanut butter, just empty space where they used to be. He slumped against the cool metal shelving, his heart sinking lower than a forgotten soufflé. He squeezed his eyes shut, wishing he could rewind the clock just 5 minutes to when he still thought he had enough. The aroma of his famous curry, now simmering without its soul, seemed to mock him. Tonight's service, tomorrow's reservations. The magazine feature, his entire reputation. All of it depended on that unique, irreplaceable peanut butter. And it was gone. He pictured the dining room filled with eager patrons, anticipating his masterpiece. How could he tell them? How could he face them? Antoine slowly walked back to the main kitchen. The empty tub still clutched in his hand, like a broken dream. Leo and Maria looked at him, their faces mirroring his despair. We don't have enough for the rest of the night," Antoine said, his voice barely a whisper. "And we certainly don't have any for tomorrow." Kitchen, usually a symphony of sizzling pans and clanging pots, fell silent. The only sound was the gentle bubbling of the curry. A sad, empty sound now. Antoine stared at the empty tub, a symbol of his impending ruin. He felt completely, utterly defeated. The night devolved into a culinary disaster. Antoine, ever the professional, tried his best. He substituted a generic high-quality peanut butter for the remaining orders, but the difference was stark. The rich, nuanced flavor of the Memphis Melody Curry was replaced by a flat one-dimensional echo. Customers noticed, whispers rippled through the dining room. Some polite inquiries. Antoine felt each one like a punch to the gut. After the last disgruntled customer left, Antoine sent his weary staff home, telling them he needed to sort things out. He then launched into a frantic, solitary mission. First, he called every local grocery store. From the upscale organic markets to the forgotten corner shops, "Do you have any small batch artisanal peanut butter? Any from Georgia, the specific farm? Red clay gold. They went out of business, but perhaps you have old stock." The answer was always a polite, or sometimes bewildered no. He tried online. He found a few obscure food forums, post his desperate pleas. Chef in crisis, seeking red clay gold, peanut butter, any lead, any amount, no matter the price. The replies were sympathetic but fruitless. "Oh, that stuff was amazing," one user wrote. "Heard they closed down years ago." "Good luck, chef, that's like finding a unicorn." A unicorn? That's exactly what it felt like. Next he called fellow chefs, even his friendly rivals. "Chef Dubois, what a surprise. What can I do for you?" they'd ask, their voices tinged with curiosity. Antoine swallowed his pride and explained his predicament, feeling a blush creep up his neck. The reactions ranged from genuine sympathy, "Oh man, that's rough. No, I don't keep that kind of specialty stuff," to thinly veiled amusement. "You built your signature dish on peanut butter, and now you're out. How unique!" No one had it. No one even knew where to begin looking. He even considered driving. Maybe a small town, an out-of-the-way general store, might still have a forgotten jar on a dusty shelf. Pulled out a map circling Georgia, then shaking his head. It was a fool's errand. The farm had closed 2 years ago. Any remaining stock would have been used up or spoiled. The hours bled into the early morning. The kitchen, usually a vibrant hub of activity, was cold and silent save for the hum of the refrigerators. Antoine paced. He ran his hands through his hair. He sat at the prep table, head in his hands, then sprang up again, driven by a desperate, gnawing need to find a solution. He thought about rebranding the dish, changing the name, changing the recipe. The Memphis Melody Curry wasn't just a recipe. It was a connection. It was a story. It was the dish that had put the golden spoon on the map. He'd spent years perfecting it, finding that perfect balance, that elusive flavor profile that made people close their eyes and hum with delight. Without that specific peanut butter, it would be just another curry. A good curry, perhaps, but not his Memphis Melody Curry. He thought about the customers who had made reservations specifically for that dish, the couple celebrating their anniversary, the food critic who was due next week, the family reunion that had planned their entire trip around a meal at his restaurant. He imagined their disappointment, their polite but firm cancellations. The restaurant's reputation, built on years of dedication and quality, could crumble in a single week. He slumped onto a stool, staring at the empty tub on the counter. It felt like a cruel joke. How could such a small thing, a jar of peanut butter, hold so much power over his professional life? He loved his restaurant, loved the joy he brought people through his food. The thought of losing it all, of letting his dream wither, was unbearable. The first rays of dawn crept through the kitchen windows, painting the stainless steel with a ghostly pale light. Antoine had been up all night, fueled by strong coffee and mounting despair. His phone lay beside him, untouched for the last hour. He had exhausted every logical, conventional avenue. There was nowhere else to look, no one else to call. Picked up the empty tub again, running his thumb over the faint, almost invisible residue inside. A fleeting scent of roasted peanuts, honey, and something earthy unique. It was the ghost of a flavor that now haunted him. He felt the heavy weight of defeat settle over him. He was a chef, a creator. But without his medium, he was nothing. He closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the cool tiles of the wall. He was out of options. He was truly, utterly, and hopelessly out of peanut butter. And perhaps out of luck. Just for a few minutes, his exhaustion finally overpowering him. He was jolted awake by the shrill ring of his phone, vibrating against the stainless steel counter. He fumbled for it, his eyes gritty, his mind still clouded with the previous night's nightmare of empty tubs. He squinted at the screen. Unknown number. Probably another telemarketer or a well-meaning but ultimately useless lead from a food forum. He almost let it go to voicemail, but some instinct, a flicker of that desperate hope that refused to die, made him answer. "Hello," he croaked, his voice thick with sleep and despair. A low, resonant voice, smooth as velvet and deep as a southern river, purred from the other end. "Well, hello there. Chef Dubois heard you. Got yourself a little peanut butter problem." Antoine froze. His blood ran cold. He sat bolt upright on the stool. How did this person know his name and about the peanut butter? He hadn't publicly announced his crisis, only put out feelers to a select few. "Who is this?" Antoine demanded, suspicion hardening his tone. He braced himself for a prank call, a cruel joke at his expense. "Name's Presley? Son Elvis Presley." Antoine scoffed. An incredulous laugh bubbled up, bitter and humorless. "Yeah, and I'm the Queen of England. Look, whoever this is, I'm not in the mood for games. I've got a restaurant to save." He was about to hang up his finger, already moving towards the end call button. The voice continued unwavering, with a distinct, charming drawl that was uncanny. "Now hold on a minute, chef. Don't be so quick to dismiss a good Samaritan. I heard about your particular predicament with that red clay gold spread. A crying shame they shut down." Antoine's hand hovered red clay gold. He hadn't mentioned a specific farm to anyone beyond his closest contacts. How could this Elvis know that? "Listen, I know what you're thinking," the voice continued, a chuckle rippling through the line. "But I assure you, this ain't no prank. I got a soft spot for folks who put their heart into what they do, and I hear your Memphis Melody Curry is something else." Antoine's skepticism warred with a bizarre growing sense of unease, and a sliver of desperate curiosity. How do you know all this?" "Let's just say a little birdie told me," Elvis replied, the amusement clear in his voice. A very well-connected birdie at that point is, I might just have a solution for you. Chef, Antoine's breath hitched. A solution for his irreplaceable peanut butter. His mind screamed scam. But his heart, so utterly depleted, clung to the faintest spark of possibility. What kind of solution? Antoine asked, his voice barely above a whisper. There's no more of that peanut butter anywhere. Well, now that's where you're wrong, son, Elvis said, his voice dropping slightly, becoming more serious. There's always a way. Just sometimes you gotta think a little outside the box, or, in my case, outside the Graceland gates. Another chuckle. Antoine's mind raced. Was this some eccentric collector who had a hidden stash? But you mean? I mean, I've got a way to get you the best daggone peanut butter you've ever tasted. Even better than your red clay gold, Elvis stated, conviction in every syllable. But it ain't gonna be easy. And it's gonna be, well, let's just say it's gonna be a trip. A trip? Antoine's exhausted brain struggled to process this. A trip where to get more of it? Something like that, Elvis said cryptically. A journey for special ingredients, a little bit of faith, and a whole lot of rock and roll, if you catch my drift. Antoine rubbed his temples. Look, Mr. Presley, or whoever you are, I appreciate the thought, but I'm not sure I understand. You don't gotta understand it, Chef, Elvis said, his voice suddenly firm, losing its playful edge. You just gotta trust me. You want your restaurant to sing again, don't you? You want that Memphis Melody to hit all the right notes. Antoine thought of the disappointed faces from last night, the looming cancellations. He thought of his dream teetering on the brink. He had nothing left to lose. What do I need to do? Antoine asked, the words feeling foreign yet utterly compelling. Now you're talking, son. Elvis's voice was instantly lighter, brimming with a peculiar enthusiasm. All right, listen close. I'm gonna give you some instructions. You gotta follow them to the letter. This ain't no ordinary grocery run. He then proceeded to give Antoine directions, not to a store, but to a remote, unnamed highway. And then a list of items to bring, not money, not chef's tools. A blue suede shoe, a guitar pick, a white rose. This was beyond absurd. This was certifiable madness. You want me to bring these to where? Antoine stammered, staring at his bizarre shopping list. I'll tell you the rest when you got those items. Chef, just know this. The king don't steer nobody wrong when it comes to soul food or soul music or peanut butter. With a final, confident, the line went dead. Antoine slowly lowered the phone, staring at the receiver as if it had just grown wings. Elvis Presley, blue suede shoes, a secret peanut butter solution. He was either truly losing his mind or he had just received the most insane yet potentially brilliant offer of his life. He looked at the empty peanut butter tub. He looked at the bizarre list. What did he have to lose? Antoine spent the rest of the morning in a haze, the phone call replaying in his head like a broken record. Elvis Presley. It sounded so ludicrous. He kept pinching himself, but he wasn't dreaming. The note with the cryptic list of items was real, clutched in his hand. A blue suede shoe, a vintage guitar, pick, a single white rose. He briefly considered calling the number back, but it remained unknown. He tried to search for Elvis Presley and peanut butter solution online, but only came up with articles about Elvis's famous love for peanut butter and banana sandwiches. Nothing about him having a secret supply, let alone a magical growing method. He finally came to a decision. He had tried everything sensible. Now it was time to try the insensible. He had nowhere else to turn. His first stop was a local antique shop, a cluttered treasure trove, owned by an elderly woman named Martha, who knew the history of every trinket. Martha, I need something very specific, Antoine began, feeling foolish already. Do you by any chance have a single blue suede shoe? and it needs to be worn. Martha, who had seen everything in her 50 years of collecting, simply raised an eyebrow. Well, chef, that's a first. Are we talking fashion, statement, or prop for a play? Antoine sighed. Neither. Really, it's complicated for a very important ingredient. Martha rummaged through a dusty box of old shoes. To Antoine's astonishment, she pulled out a single left blue suede loafer. It was faded, scuffed at the toe, and the suede was soft with age. It looked like it had seen many dance floors. Is this the only one? Antoine asked, inspecting it. Martha nodded. Lost its mate years ago. Always thought about throwing it out, but something told me to keep it. Call it a hunch. Antoine bought it, feeling a shiver run down his spine. First item, check. This was either an insane coincidence or something stranger was at play next. The vintage guitar pick. This proved harder. He visited a pawn shop, a music store, even put out a query on a local musicians forum. Most picks were plastic, modern. He needed something vintage, with a bit of a shimmer. Just as he was about to give up, he remembered a small, obscure junk shop on the outskirts of town, run by a reclusive man known only as Fingers for his uncanny ability to find lost objects. Fingers chuckled a dry, raspy sound. He pulled out a small, triangular piece of celluloid. It was iridescent, shimmering with faint streaks of gold and pearl. It had a worn, smooth feel, clearly handled many times. This here, Fingers said, holding it up, was from a traveling musician back in the 50s. Said it brought him luck. Played with the best of 'em, he did. Antoine paid for it. A strange sense of momentum building. 2 down. Pieces of this bizarre puzzle were falling into place with unsettling ease. Finally, the white rose. This was the easiest, yet perhaps the most meaningful. He went to the local florist, a cheerful woman named Lily. A single white rose, fresh as the morning dew, Antoine requested. Lily smiled, picking out a perfect bloom. Its petals pristine, its fragrance delicate. For someone special, chef, and the impossible solution. You could say that. Lily, very special indeed. He held the rose carefully, its fragility a stark contrast to the rough texture of the blue suede shoe and the hard smoothness of the guitar pick. Back at the restaurant, the items lay on his prep table, glinting in the pale afternoon light. The blue suede shoe, the shimmering guitar pick, the pristine white rose. They looked like props from a surreal play, not ingredients for a culinary masterpiece. Up his phone, the unknown number still displayed from the morning. He half expected it to be a dead line. He pressed call. It rang once, then twice, then a click. Well, look at you, chef. Elvis's voice boomed clear and strong. You're a man of your word. You got the items. I do, Antoine said, a thrill of nervousness shooting through him. The blue suede shoe, the guitar pick, and the white rose. Excellent, excellent, Elvis purred. This one's where the sole gets mended, not broken. Antoine quickly pulled up his GPS. Route 61. The blues highway ran through Mississippi, Missouri, and beyond. He typed in Heartbreak Hotel. Nothing. Then he remembered Elvis's words. It's not showing up on my GPS, Antoine said, frustration creeping into his voice. Ain't no surprise there, chef, Elvis chuckled. Some places ain't meant to be found by machines. You gotta feel 'em. Look for a crossroads where the pavement turns to gravel. You'll see it then tucked away like a forgotten dream. Just make sure you get there before the sun sets tomorrow. Before sunset, Antoine glanced at the clock. It was already late afternoon. That meant he had to leave immediately. If he wanted to make it by tomorrow evening, this was a full day's drive at least. That's right. Chef time waits for no man, especially when you got a destiny to fulfill. Now drive safe and keep that heart open. You're about to learn a little something about magic. The line clicked again. Antoine stood there, the phone slowly falling from his ear. He looked at the bizarre collection of objects, then at his kitchen, then out the window at the setting sun. He was embarking on the most absurd journey of his life. For peanut butter, he had to be crazy or perhaps brilliant. Antoine packed a small bag, mostly snacks and coffee. He left a note for Leo, explaining that he was on an urgent supply run and would be back as soon as possible. He didn't dare mention Elvis' blue suede shoes or hidden hotels. Leo would think he'd finally snapped under the pressure. He fueled up his reliable, if somewhat mundane sedan and pointed it west. The first few hours of the drive were normal. The hum of the highway a familiar drone. He passed towns, farms, the endless expanse of American landscape. But as he drove, following the general direction Elvis had given him, Route 61, then where the maps get fuzzy, he felt a subtle shift. The road became less trafficked. The towns grew smaller. The distances between them longer. The trees grew denser, their branches reaching over the road like gnarled fingers. The sky, a brilliant cerulean at first, began to blush with the hues of a lingering sunset, painting the horizon in shades of orange and deep purple. His GPS, which had been valiantly trying to recalculate his route back to a major interstate, eventually gave up, displaying a blank screen with a frustrated message. No road found. Well, Elvis, Antoine muttered to himself. You weren't kidding about where the maps get fuzzy. He relied on instinct and the strange, almost hypnotic pull of the road. He looked for the crossroads where the pavement turns to gravel and the old oak tree like a lonely sentinel. And then, as twilight deepened into night, he saw it. A dilapidated crossroads. The asphalt ended abruptly, giving way to a dusty gravel road that snaked off into the shadows. And there, standing guard over the intersection, was an ancient sprawling oak tree, its branches, thick with years, twisted towards the sky, silhouetted against the last faint glow of the sunset. It was exactly as Elvis had described. Antoine took a deep breath, a mix of fear and excitement swirling in his gut. He turned onto the gravel road, his car bouncing and rattling as the tires churned up dust. The beam of his headlights cut through the deepening gloom, illuminating a path bordered by dense whispering woods. He drove for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only 20 minutes. The road seemed to stretch endlessly, the trees pressing in on either side. He started to doubt, to question his sanity. Had he driven all this way for nothing? Was this some elaborate, cruel joke? Just as despair began to creep, and a faint light glimmered through the trees ahead. It was a soft yellowish glow, not like harsh electric streetlights. As he drew closer, a shape began to materialize out of the darkness. It was a building, a motel, undoubtedly, but unlike any he'd ever seen. It was old, clearly neglected, with peeling paint and sagging eaves. Yet it possessed an undeniable, almost ghostly charm. A large, faded sign, once probably vibrant, now barely legible, swaying slightly in the gentle breeze. He could just make out the words, Heartbreak Hotel. Antoine pulled his car to a stop in the overgrown gravel parking lot. The only other vehicle was a pristine, gleaming pink Cadillac, parked discreetly under a drooping willow tree. His heart pounded. This was it. He cut the engine. The sudden silence was profound, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves. He looked at the blue suede shoe, the guitar pick, and the white rose nestled on his passenger seat. They seemed to hum with a strange energy. Taking a deep, bracing breath, he stepped out of the car. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth. And something else, something sweet, like night-blooming jasmine mixed with a faint hint of old wood, and something vaguely musical. The entrance to the motel lobby was dark, but the faint light he'd seen earlier seemed to emanate from within. He pushed open the heavy wooden door. It creaked on ancient hinges, a mournful sound that echoed through the quiet. The lobby was dusty, dimly lit by a single flickering lamp on a counter. Shadows danced in the corners, making the furniture seem to shift. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper, and something indefinably nostalgic, like memories themselves, had taken root here. Everywhere, He looked. There was Elvis, not tacky, mass-produced memorabilia, but authentic. Faded photographs, vintage record sleeves, newspaper clippings. Yellowed with age, a velvet-covered armchair looked like it belonged in Graceland. A dusty jukebox stood silently in the corner, its chrome dulled by time. It was less a motel, more a shrine, and then he heard it, faint at first, a gentle strumming a guitar, playing a familiar soulful melody, classic Elvis tune, but stripped down, raw, just the guitar, pure and true. The sound seemed to beckon him further into the hotel. Antoine swallowed his throat. Suddenly dry, he clutched his strange offerings closer. He was either walking into a madman's lair, or he was about to meet the king himself. And somehow, in this strange, ethereal place, the second option felt disturbingly, thrillingly possible. He followed the music, his footsteps echoing softly on the worn wooden floor. The music grew louder as Antoine walked deeper into the Heartbreak Hotel. It led him down a narrow, dimly lit hallway past closed doors, each one seemingly holding its own secrets. The air grew warmer and the scent of jasmine and old wood intensified. He reached the end of the hallway and found a door slightly ajar. A soft golden light spilling out the guitar music, rich and clear, emanated from within. Taking another deep breath, Antoine pushed the door open. It wasn't a guest room. It was a spacious yet cozy living area. One wall was entirely bookshelves, filled with old books, mostly about music, botany, and philosophy. Another wall was adorned with more subtle Elvis memorabilia, a framed gold record, a worn scarf, a black and white photo of a young man with a guitar, smiling brightly. In the center of the room, seated in a worn but plush armchair, his back to Antoine, was a man. He was impeccably dressed, not in a flashy stage costume, but a simple, elegant white jumpsuit, impeccably tailored. His hair was dark, swept back in that iconic style, though streaks of silver now graced his temples. He was playing an acoustic guitar, his fingers dancing effortlessly over the strings, coaxing out the soulful melody that had drawn Antoine here. The tune reached its gentle conclusion, and the man slowly lowered his guitar. He took a deep breath, then, without turning, spoke. "Took you long enough, Chef Dubois? The peanut butter couldn't wait forever, you know." Antoine froze. The voice was unmistakable. Deeper, perhaps, a little more weathered by time, but undeniably powerfully. "Elvis, Elvis." Antoine finally managed to stammer the word, feeling utterly nerveux on his tongue. The man chuckled, a warm, rumbling sound. He slowly turned his eyes, still remarkably bright and full of life, fixed on Antoine. They were a vivid blue, deep and knowing. His smile was gentle, etched with kindness and a hint of mischief. It was him, older. Yes, not the young, explosive performer of legend, but the eyes, the smile, the very aura. It was Elvis Presley. Antoine felt a wave of disbelief, then awe, then a strange sense of calm wash over him. "The one and only," Elvis said, gesturing to a comfortable-looking armchair opposite him. "Come on in, son. Make yourself at home. No need to stand on ceremony with the king." Antoine numbly walked into the room, his eyes scanning every detail, trying to reconcile the legend with the man sitting before him. He sat down, still clutching his strange offerings. "So," Elvis said, leaning forward slightly, his gaze falling on the items in Antoine's hands. "You brought the ingredients." Antoine nodded, laying them gently on the small table between them. "The blue suede shoe, the guitar pick, the white rose." "Excellent," Elvis said, picking up the shoe. He ran his thumb over the worn suede. He looked at Antoine, his expression softening. "You must be wondering how I knew, how I'm here." Antoine could only nod, speechless. "Well, Chef," Elvis began, "let's just say, when you reach a certain level of awareness, things tend to get back to you. I've been off the grid for a good long while, enjoying my retirement, pursuing my trade, my mom's the earth and what it can bring forth. He paused. Then a knowing twinkle appeared in his eyes. And a man who loves his peanut butter as much as I do, well, he tends to know where the good stuff comes from. And when a fellow soul is in a bind dispute, a message finds its way to me. But how did you know about the red clay gold peanut butter specifically? Antoine pressed. Like I said, well-connected birdie. Besides, a truly great peanut butter is hard to forget. But yours, chef, sounds like it's missing something even more essential than a specific brand name. It's missing its soul, and that's where I come in. I've been cultivating something special here. Something truly unique that music wasn't just for listening. It's a force, a living, breathing energy, and I've found a way to use that energy to create. Well, to create miracles, you could say. Antoine leaned forward, captivated. Miracles, indeed, Elvis said, a mysterious smile playing on his lips. Specifically, peanuts, miracles, the kind that will make your Memphis Melody Curry sing like it's never sung before. You ready to see a little bit of the impossible, chef? He rose from his armchair, his movements surprisingly agile for a man who had famously battled health issues. Follow me, he said, and led Antoine towards another door almost hidden behind a curtain of lush green plants that seemed to thrive even indoors. Antoine's heart hammered in his chest. He was about to witness the absurd and brilliant solution. Elvis pushed aside a heavy velvet curtain, revealing a hidden doorway. Beyond it, Antoine stepped into a different world. It was a large glass-enclosed space, a greenhouse, but unlike any he had ever seen. The air inside was warm and humid, carrying the rich, earthy scent of soil and damp foliage, mingled with something sweet and nutty. Sunlight filtered through the glass roof, bathed the interior in a soft, ethereal glow. And everywhere, as far as the eye could see, were peanut plants, not the scraggly, low-lying plants Antoine vaguely remembered from pictures, but tall, vibrant bushes, their leaves a deep, healthy green, their stems thick and strong. They looked incredibly alive. Or speakers, large and small, were strategically placed amongst the plants, some even suspended from the ceiling. From them emanated a continuous low-frequency sound. Not exactly music, more like a gentle rhythmic pulse occasionally punctuated by a low, resonant chord or a soft, soulful vocalization. It felt like the very air was singing. "Welcome, chef," Elvis said, a proud smile on his face, "to my peanut kingdom. This is where the magic happens." Antoine walked slowly among the rows of plants, his chef's instincts immediately recognizing the extraordinary health of the flora. These weren't just well-tended plants, they were thriving beyond anything he'd witnessed. Antoine, still in awe, whispered, "Music?" "Exactly," Elvis beamed. "Most folks think music is just for listening, for dancing, for feeling good, and it is no doubt, but it's also a creative force, a healing force. I call it vibrational agriculture." He walked over to a small raised bed filled with dark, rich soil, picked up a handful, letting it sift through his fingers. "This just dirt, chef. This soil is infused with positive vibrations. I place certain frequencies to it, certain songs, certain hymns. And the water I use," he pointed to a large clear tank with tubes running into the beds. "Treated." "Now the peanuts themselves," Elvis continued, bending down to show a cluster of plump pods emerging from the soil. "These ain't your ordinary peanuts. These are singing peanuts." He carefully dug up a single plant, showing Antoine the roots. Dangling from them were large, perfectly formed peanut pods, far bigger and more numerous than any Antoine had ever seen. Their shells seemed to glow with a healthy sheen. "Each seed," Elvis explained, "is planted with intention, with music. Take this, for example." He gestured to a small, empty patch of soil. "You brought me these gifts, right? The blue suede shoe, the guitar pick, the white rose. Antoine nodded. Elvis took the blue suede shoe. With a theatrical flourish, he carefully scooped a small amount of the vibrantly dark soil into it. "This here shoe," he murmured. "It's walked 1,000 miles, danced 1,000 dances. It carries the rhythm of life itself." He then took a single perfectly formed peanut seed slightly larger than normal from a small velvet pouch. "And this little fellow," he said, placing the seed gently into the soil in the shoe, "is ready to sing its own song." He then picked up the guitar pick. "This pick," he said, holding it aloft so it caught the light and shimmered, "its coaxed melodies from the strings, brought joy to millions. It's going to help the seed find its tune." He carefully pushed the pick into the soil next to the seed. Finally, he took the white rose. He plucked a single petal, crushed it gently between his fingers, and sprinkled the fragrant dust over the seed and soil. "And this rose," he whispered, "it adds beauty, purity, and the sweet promise of growth." Then Elvis did something that truly made Antoine's jaw drop. He closed his eyes, held his hand over the shoe, and began to hum. It wasn't a casual hum. It was a deep, resonating sound that vibrated through the air, seeming to fill the entire greenhouse. As he hummed, he subtly modulated the pitch, creating a soft, almost imperceptible melody. It was like a lullaby, a blessing. As he hummed, Antoine swore he saw a faint shimmer around the blue suede shoe, a subtle pulsation, and then slowly, impossibly, the tiny peanut seed in the shoe began to swell. A minuscule green shoot emerged from the soil, pushing its way upwards with astonishing speed. Within minutes, a tiny plant complete with miniature leaves had sprouted. Elvis opened his eyes, a triumphant smile on his face. "You see, Chef, music. It's the ultimate fertilizer. It's the rhythm of life. And these peanuts, they don't just grow, they sing." Carefully poured a small amount of the harmonized water into the shoe. "Now, this little guy will keep growing, but we don't have time to wait for a full harvest," he winked. "Good thing I got a whole field of them ready for you, just singing their hearts out." Antoine was speechless. He reached out and gently touched the tiny, impossibly fast-growing plant. It was real. This was truly absurd and unbelievably, brilliantly real. "Well, Chef Elvis," said a twinkle in his eye, "what do you say we get you some of these musical marvels?" Antoine, still reeling from the spectacle of the sprouting peanut plant, could only nod mutely. He followed Elvis further into the greenhouse, marveling at the lushness of the plants. The air felt thick with positive energy, humming with the constant, gentle sound from the speakers. Elvis led him to a section of the greenhouse where the peanut plants were mature, laden with plump pods. He demonstrated the harvesting method. "You gotta approach 'em with respect, son," he advised, his voice soft. "These ain't just food. They're creations born of harmony and good vibrations." He knelt beside a plant, gently brushing away the soil around its base. "You gotta listen to 'em," he murmured, his ear close to the ground. "They'll tell you when they're ready." He then hummed a gentle rising scale, and with a soft tug the plant came free, its roots trailing clusters of large, beautifully formed peanut pods. "Your turn, Chef," Elvis encouraged, handing Antoine a small, specialized digging tool. Antoine, a master of culinary precision, was initially clumsy. He was used to chopping, searing, and plating, not coaxing food from the earth with songs. But under Elvis's patient guidance, he slowly began to get the rhythm. He listened to the hum of the greenhouse, felt the warmth of the soil, and tried to connect with the plants. He even found himself humming a soft, off-key melody that nevertheless felt right in this strange, musical sanctuary. As they worked side by side, digging and collecting the singing peanuts, they talked. Elvis shared anecdotes from his life, not the famous rock and roll stories, but quiet reflections on fame, finding peace, and the surprising joy of rediscovering simple things. He spoke of how he had retreated from the public eye years ago, seeking a deeper connection to life, to the earth, and to the power of pure, unadulterated sound. "Folks think I disappeared because I was tired of it all," Elvis mused, carefully placing a handful of peanuts into a woven basket. "And maybe a part of me but mostly I just felt there was more to life than spotlights and screaming fans. There's a different kind of magic out there in the quiet, in the growth and the rhythm of the universe." Antoine, in turn, shared his passion for cooking. He spoke of the satisfaction of creating a dish that brought people joy, of the challenge of perfecting, a flavor of the love he poured into the golden spoon. He confessed his fear of losing it all, of the empty peanut butter tub being the end of his dream. It's going to remind you that the most brilliant solutions often come from the most unexpected places, and sometimes you've got to be a little absurd to find the genius. After what felt like hours, they had filled several baskets with the singing peanuts. The pods were exceptionally clean, large, and surprisingly fragrant, even before being roasted. "Now for the grand finale," Elvis announced, leading Antoine to a small, antique-looking building adjacent to the greenhouse. Inside was a small, immaculate processing room. There, on a polished wooden counter, sat an old-fashioned peanut butter churn, gleaming brass and dark wood. It looked like something from another era. "This here," Elvis said, patting the churn, "is where the harmony gets truly creamy." He showed Antoine how to lightly roast the peanuts, just enough to bring out their essential oils without losing their unique flavor. The aroma that filled the room was intoxicating, a deep, rich, nutty scent unlike any peanut Antoine had ever smelled. Then they fed the warm, roasted peanuts into the churn. The machine hummed to life, a gentle, rhythmic sound that seemed to blend with the distant, faint music from the greenhouse. Slowly, steadily, a stream of golden brown peanut butter began to emerge. Antoine watched, mesmerized. It wasn't just peanut butter. It was alive. It had a silky texture, a luminous quality that seemed to shimmer in the light and the taste. Elvis dipped a clean spoon into the fresh butter and offered it to Antoine. Hesitantly, Antoine took a small taste. His eyes widened, his breath hitched. It was beyond anything he had ever imagined. Creamy, intensely flavorful, with a depth and complexity that was almost spiritual. "It tasted of sunshine, earth, and music," Elvis said softly. Antoine, tears pricking his eyes, nodded. You saved me, Elvis." Elvis simply chuckled. "Nah, chef, you saved yourself. You just needed a little reminder that sometimes the answer ain't where you expect it to be. Sometimes it's just a little bit of harmony away." With a carefully sealed jar of the extraordinary singing peanut butter nestled safely in a cooler, Antoine said his goodbyes to Elvis. King gave him a knowing wink, a firm handshake, and a final piece of advice. "Remember, chef, the secret to anything truly great ain't just the ingredients, it's the heart you put into it, and the song you let it sing." The drive back was a blur of anticipation and renewed energy. The long hours on the road didn't matter. The absurd circumstances of his acquisition didn't matter. All that mattered was the precious jar on his passenger seat, glowing faintly with its inner magic. He was no longer just a chef. He was a custodian of culinary harmony. He arrived back at the Golden Spoon just as the first rays of morning light touched the city skyline. Leo was already there, looking weary but relieved to see Antoine. "Chef, you're back. Did you find anything?" Leo asked, his voice hesitant, clearly not expecting a positive answer. Antoine just smiled, a wide, genuine smile that hadn't touched his face in days. "Let's just say I found the ingredient and then some." He carefully placed the cooler on the prep table, unzipped it, and presented the jar of singing peanut butter. Leo peered at it skeptically. "It looks different. Is it a new brand?" Antoine just winked. "You could say that, Leo. It's a special batch. Now, Let's get to work. We have a lot of lost melody to make up for. The aroma that began to waft from Antoine's kitchen that morning was unlike anything anyone at the Golden Spoon had ever experienced. As Antoine prepared the base for the Memphis Melody Curry, adding the new peanut butter, the familiar scent of spices and coconut milk was elevated, transformed. It was deeper, richer, with an almost luminous quality. Kitchen, filled with a profound nutty sweetness that made everyone inhale deeply. Their eyes wide with a mix of wonder and hunger, Chef Maria said, drawn into the kitchen by the intoxicating smell. "What is that? It's incredible." Antoine simply smiled, stirring the creamy golden curry which now seemed to shimmer with an inner light. The Memphis Melody, Maria, back and better than ever. That evening the restaurant was buzzing. Despite the previous night's disappointment, word had spread that Antoine was back. And something was different. The first plates of Memphis Melody Curry went out with a flourish. Antoine watched from the pass, his heart pounding with a mixture of nerve and excitement. He saw the first customers take a bite. A woman closed her eyes, a sigh of pure bliss escaping her lips. Her husband looked at her, then took his own bite, his fork almost trembling. His eyes widened, and he simply nodded, speechless, a look of profound satisfaction on his face. At another table, a group of friends who had been disappointed the night before exchanged glances of disbelief. "This isn't just good," one exclaimed. "This is transcendent. What did you do, chef?" Word spread like wildfire through the dining room. Whispers of divine, magical, and unbelievable filled the air. Customers who had ordered other dishes suddenly wanted to try the curry. Kitchen was slammed, but this time it was a joyous, exhilarating kind of chaos. Reservations started pouring in, the phone ringing off the hook. People were calling from other cities, having heard about the new Memphis Melody Curry. The dish wasn't just back, it had reached a legendary status overnight. It was as if every note in its complex flavor profile had suddenly hit a perfect, harmonious chord. Antoine watched his staff, their faces glowing with renewed pride and energy. Leo moved with a newfound swagger, confidently expediting plate. Maria's smile was brighter than ever as she gracefully served the eager diners. As the night wound down and the last satisfied customer left, Antoine stood in his kitchen, utterly exhausted, but filled with a profound sense of accomplishment. He looked at the half-empty jar of singing peanut butter. It wasn't just an ingredient. It was a testament to belief, to absurdity, to the profound and brilliant power of thinking beyond the ordinary. His restaurant, the Golden Spoon, was singing again. Louder, clearer, and more beautifully than ever before. And it was all thanks to an empty jar, a desperate gamble, and the king of rock and roll. Months turned into a year. The Golden Spoon became a culinary landmark, its reputation soaring to unprecedented heights. The Memphis Melody Curry was the star consistently hailed as a masterpiece, a dish that defied explanation. Food critics raved, diners traveled from across the globe, and Antoine Dubois, the chef who had almost lost his dream over a jar of peanut butter, was now celebrated as a culinary visionary. Antoine never revealed the source of his special ingredient. When asked, he would simply smile and say, "It's a secret, born from a very unusual journey, and a little bit of harmony." He would sometimes catch a subtle hint of rock and roll in his kitchen, a faint, almost subliminal melody that only he seemed to notice. Every few months, a small, unassuming package would arrive at the restaurant, addressed simply to Chef A. Inside, Antoine would find a new jar of the singing peanut butter, always accompanied by a small, unexpected gift. A rare Pymac record of an obscure blues musician, a perfectly polished riverstone, or a singly impeccably formed peanut, surprisingly heavy for its size, and always a brief, typewritten note. "Keep the music alive. E.P." These mysterious deliveries were his lifeline, his connection to the most absurd yet brilliant chapter of his life. He often wondered about Elvis, the reclusive king of rock and roll, tending his musical peanut farm in the middle of nowhere. Was he really him? Or was he a spirit, a manifestation of the very essence of creativity and unconventional thinking? Antoine decided it didn't matter. The magic was real, and that was enough. The experience with Elvis had fundamentally changed Antoine. It wasn't just about saving his restaurant, it was about opening his mind. He began to approach all aspects of his cooking with a renewed sense of experimentation and an unconventional flair. He started playing soft classical music in his prep kitchen, believing it influenced the energy of his ingredients. He encouraged his staff to imbue their work with passion, to sing with their hands as they chopped, stirred, and plated. His other dishes, while not as overtly musical, subtly benefited from this new philosophy. Customers remarked on the positive energy of the food, the soul in every bite. Antoine's reputation grew beyond just a master chef. He was seen as an artist who truly understood the deeper connections between food, emotion, and the subtle energies of the universe. He often found himself reflecting on that desperate night, staring at the empty peanut butter tub. He remembered the fear, the hopelessness, and then the absurd call, the bizarre instructions, the journey into the unknown. It had been terrifying, exhilarating, and ultimately profoundly lovely. He learned that sometimes the most logical solutions aren't the best ones. Sometimes you need to step outside your comfort zone, embrace the ridiculous, and trust in a little bit of magic. And sometimes that magic comes in the form of a king who knows a thing or two about peanut butter and the rhythm of life. One quiet afternoon, as he stirred a new experimental sauce, a faint blues melody drifted through the kitchen. Antoine closed his eyes, a serene smile on his lips. He imagined Elvis somewhere out there strumming his guitar, coaxing harmony from the earth. He listened, truly listened to the music in his kitchen, to the song in his heart, and to the silent, harmonious melody that now infused every dish at the Golden Spoon. He knew with absolute certainty that his restaurant would continue to sing forever, touched by the absurd and brilliant legacy of the king